like we were going to South America with that music. Hey, you're listening to Big Blend Radio's Toast to the Art Show, and today we're welcoming back Victoria Chick. She's a contemporary figurative artist and early 19th and 20th century print collector based in beautiful Silver City, New Mexico, which is in the southwest corner of the state, and a really popular art community. And actually, through all that, Victoria has spearheaded the development of the Southwest Regional Museum of Art and Art Center. So this is an ongoing project with a lot of people getting involved. But yeah, I think she woke up one day and said, Silver City needs a museum. We need to have a fine art museum, and that's that. And she hasn't stopped, but now it's really a Southwest Regional Museum because it really is growing as an art destination, and it's also an awesome place to go hang out because you've got the Gila Cliff Dwellings National Monument. Speaking of, today is the start of National Park Week, and the Gila Cliff Dwellings National Monument happens to be one of our very first national monuments within the National Park Service. It's also home to the Gila National Forest and Gila Wilderness Area, and there's just a lot to see and do. And downtown Silver City is so much fun. A lot of galleries, restaurants, and it's just, you got to go there. So anyway, the first thing to do is go to Victoria's website to see her art. It's victoriachick.com. She's on our show every third Thursday like today, but today she's going to be talking about artist Margaret-Jordan-Patterson, and the article about her is up on the Blend website, which is blendradiotv.com. And now I'm tired of talking. Welcome back, Victoria.
Well, all righty then.
How are you?
Hi. I'm glad to be talking to you today.
You do. It's always fun to chat with you. Sometimes we're doing Zoom and recording, but it's really good to have you back on a live show. And, yeah, I mean, how is Silver City doing? Is spring sprung in Silver City? And how is the museum going, too?
Well, gosh, those are lots of questions. Silver City is doing great. We've got a couple of new galleries, actually, since we talked last. They're going well, and there's a lot of things going on that are things that are gearing up. We've got the Tour of the Gila coming up, which is a 5-day bicycle race. That's always a big draw. And of course, there's bicycles all over. People come in early to kind of train and get used to the altitude here before the big race. So it's kind of a big citywide, almost county-wide event, because some days they bicycle 90 miles, some days it's just right around town, and people gather on the sidewalks to watch them come whizzing down the hill and trying to make the corner without crashing. So it's very exciting. So and the museum is coming along. We've got some new board members, and so they are enthusiastic, and we're making progress. That's all I can say about that. And we continue to get artwork donations, or gifts, I should say.
So, hint. You can contact Victoria Chick. Go to victoriachick.com. Hint.
Hey, I'll be glad to talk.
Yeah, and especially I think because you're Southwest, I love that because there's so much. But you're so close to Tucson, El Paso, Las Cruces. And it's kind of a corridor, but Southwest New Mexico itself is it is completely different than the northern part.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the terrain. And
it's interesting. Southwest New Mexico is completely different than Southeast New Mexico. Mm-hmm. But each area has their own kind of distinctive style and attractions. So it makes for an interesting state.
It's the land of enchantment, and then it's New Mexico true, because I think New Mexico, we always talk about Louisiana like this too, has really kept its identity of, the people, the nature, the history. It's preserved it, and I think one of the best ways to really interpret a state is through art,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's historic. Artists were the first people that went, hey, look at this. You can't go there. I'll bring it to you. Look at this picture.
Well, I wanted to just touch on real quick, too, because, you're talking about the bicycle, the tour of the Gila, but the Clay Art Festival is coming up this summer too, that people might want to mark their calendar. So you're going to visit silvercity.org, I think. We have a calendar up on nationalparktraveling.com too. But the Clay Festival, that's a huge draw for those, and talk about really connecting with the culture and the history of your area.
Yes, that's good. The Clay Festival is different every year, but they always have an international juried art exhibition, which is wonderful. The clay artists from any country can enter, and many countries are represented have been represented in the past. They have workshops. They have films. They have the different galleries kind of participate by sponsoring clay exhibitions. Cool. So there's all kinds of clay. There's also clay. There's a buyer's market, which is always really fun. And we get a lot of really great artists from Mexico come up, and there are some techniques that certain areas of Mexico are really famous for. Very intricate design work on their ceramic ware. So it's not to be missed.
That's really it's exciting. I love Silver City, and I love how the community really comes together around art and nature and history. And it just seems to be and food. And we have to say you have good food too. We can't leave that out. You have really good food.
And scenery.
You know what? I'm craving some really good Mexican food right now. I'm just saying, I would do anything for a really good burrito or taco or a green chili burger. I'm kind of missing the Southwest food. You get spoiled when you live out there. It's like.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's hard to decide which restaurant, because they're all really so good. Some are a little spicier than others, but if that appeals to you, you're in luck. If you want milder, you're still in luck. So there's a big variety, and a lot of people come from different regions of Mexico. They have their ancestors have lived in various areas where some food is more like European continental. Some is really spicy, hot, and so when they've migrated, they've brought their recipes with them, and we have a great variety of types of New Mexican cooking.
That's awesome.
See, and that ties back to clay too. I mean, you got to think. A lot of food, Mexican food. And Native American food is cooked, for like a long time in clay pots. That's a huge. And even when I think about even Middle Eastern food, is use clay as just a certain type of. You can't not do it clay. You know what I mean? It's like you have to do it that way. It's like cast iron for certain things, So
there's a variety of clay that's called micaceous clay. You may be familiar with it, but it's frequently found up in the Navajo Nation, and the pottery is you're supposed to cook in it, and it's really, really beautiful. It's kind of a buff color, but when they fire it, it will develop a kind of a cloud-like area on it. And this, you never know how it's going to come out exactly, where those areas are going to come out, or how many of those areas are going to appear on your pot when it's fired. And so it's considered a real exciting thing to open the firing area and find out. And pots that have this cloud on them are really prized.
Oh, that's cool. And
that is neat.
In Africa, they used to bury clay pots, and then they'd dig a hole, put the pot of food in the ground, and then they would put a whole bunch of branches and leaves and set that on fire and cook that way.
Yeah,
I mean, it's interesting.
Yeah, that sounds like raku, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's beautiful, beautiful kind of iridescent colors on it.
Cool.
You know what? Here we are. I mean, we're talking about food, and now I'm starving. I'm like, I want my Easter dinner now. But I want to go to.
I wish we had
Margaret
started talking
Jordan
about cooking, because now I'm hungry.
Yeah, I know. Suddenly, I'm just like, I'm really hungry. It sounds, when you think about food, cooking, and clay, you just think of spice and comfort food all at the same time. And now I'm like, I can literally smell spices that aren't cooking anywhere.
Right.
But, we were going to talk about artist Margaret Jordan-Patterson. She is interesting. She was born on a boat. So this is pretty cool.
Well, it is. I thought that's one of the things that I find so fascinating about her, because I cannot imagine being born on a boat, and she makes her sound really exotic. But I suspect, her dad was a sea captain, and during a time where they didn't have steamships and stuff, they were sailing ships, and so he and his wife lived on the boat too. They transported mostly in Southeast Asia waters, and I just think that her growing up must have been fascinating. Of course, maybe like all kids, she's less ecstatic about it. But it just seems so wonderful. She saw so much by traveling around like that.
Can you imagine?
And learned a lot. I think learn about cultures and I just think it was a fantastic opportunity to me. Anyway, I grew up in a small town in Minnesota, so she sounds pretty exotic.
Okay, but can you imagine being the mother of a child on a boat? I mean,
yeah. Can you imagine? Yeah, watching a toddler learning how to walk.
Or how do you do potty duty? Teaching them how to go potty on a boat.
You put them on the leash and hang them from the mainsail.
No. This is nice, Nancy. But I mean,
how do you watch a child on a boat? Oh.
But and at the same time keep them not from wanting to do. I mean, you want kids to be playing outside. They need to have that. Yeah. So for her, I wonder if that kind of got her towards art as kind of an escape. Like books do that, but art kind of gave her this way of.
It probably helped
staying on the boat
because it made her sit down and concentrate, without going to the edge of the boat. But
exactly.
But I think her parents might have been, I'll say free spirits. Maybe not exactly, because I'm sure they were responsible people, because she made it to adulthood.
Yes,
but
she did.
Just the fact that they had jobs that were totally unusual at the time, and so I'm sure they fostered in her a similar spirit of adventure. And so I think, and I thought when she was older, I think she was 18. Her parents said goodbye, and they left her off in New York, and she went to study art at the Pratt Art Institute in New York. So,
wow.
She was. I think her abilities were at a very mature level. I'm sure after her adventurous life, she probably had to make a lot of life decisions, growing up.
That's really a young age for your parents to like, bye-bye, I see you, we're going around the world, see you.
Yeah.
Mhm. But
this would have been in like the 1890s kind of.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
So maybe not quite at the turn of the century, but anyway, she got her teaching certificate at the Pratt Institute, and through that she was able to get a job teaching at a girls' school called Dana Hall School, which I think may still be in existence in Massachusetts. And that was at a time when teachers didn't have to spend their summers getting extra educational credits. So her summer was totally free, and she took advantage of that. I'm sure she traveled. I imagine that her younger life, influenced her to do that. But she went to first she went to Belgium and France, and she painted there several summers in a row. And then one summer she decided she needed to do something different, so she went to Italy. And it was like an eye-opening experience for her, because it wasn't the North Sea kind of area. It was the Mediterranean, and the light was totally different. Kind of like describing what people come to New Mexico or Arizona from the East Coast, and the light here is such a transformative experience for them. So I think she kept going back to Italy. She just loved it. She just loved the Mediterranean light, and she went into a different direction. Instead of painting, she started doing woodcuts. I'm not sure why that happened, but I have several of her woodcuts from Italy, and she's just really skillful as a woodcut artist. And she had started having shows when she would go back to the United States, and she had shows in New York. She's worked in a number of galleries, but there was a Provincetown group of artists, and their kind of leader was a man named Arthur Dow, and he did woodcuts too, but he did color woodcuts, which are much more complicated than the black and white woodcuts or single ink color woodcut. So she began to experiment with color, and she just sort of blossomed into these color woodcuts, and she became famous. And she's still really well known. Her work is really expensive now and sought after.
I wanted to go back on the woodcuts, because I think it's something that we may forget how that is done and what that process is. So can you kind of, I know we've done shows on this years ago, and, how a woodcut is made, versus, going from when she was doing watercolors, right, to now you're doing woodcuts. That's a big jump. It's a different way of thinking.
Jump. Yeah, it's a big jump. Well, woodcut is in a category called relief prints, and you take a fine-grained, or she did anyway, something like birds or something that is real smooth, and you have tools that are mostly gouges. Some of them are V-shaped, some of them are U-shaped, but they're very sharp. And you draw a picture on the woodcut, on a piece of wood, and you gouge out everything that you want to remain white. Okay, so that the ink, but then you run a roller over it, and the ink is only on the part that's raised, that was the original level of the wood. And then you put a piece of paper on it, and you put it in a press, and when you pull the paper off, the ink has transferred to the paper.
Wow.
And
so you have to think backwards.
Image. So you kind of have to think ahead of what it's going to be like.
Yeah.
And also, in prints, you get a reverse image of the picture that you had drawn. So,
that's hard.
That's kind of a surprise.
Yeah, because if you just, we can flip photos around, right? But when you do that, there's something odd about it. It's just like the dimensions and
it's not what you saw at first. Yeah, it's really just got to, because the person who looks at it, besides you, doesn't realize it. They just think it's the way it's supposed to be, and it is supposed to be. But your initial impression was different.
Yeah, especially with people's faces. If you flip them, it's weird.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yes.
Nancy likes to do stuff like that all the time.
Now, color woodcuts are different, though. You don't put all the colors on at one time. Generally speaking, you build them up. So you use your lightest color first, and then you kind of graduate as to what gradually going to darker. So you're covering up some of the lighter area. So, but there are artists that have different techniques, and sometimes they'll build it up differently. They will put one color on, then they will do some gouging, and then they'll put another cut, and they'll gouge some of that out. And so they may put 5 or 6 colors and 5 or 6 processes. But when you put it back on, put the paper back on it, you have to be very careful to register it exactly the spot where you did the previous one. So
wow,
it's
that's crazy.
Complicated.
Yeah, it is. I find that the whole process, it seems so much easier just to paint an oil painting.
And then also, isn't it also because don't you have to, like my mind still thinks like whenever you paint or use watercolor, it's moist. I use the negative. Nobody likes the word moist, but I have to use it.
Moist.
I did. I used it. I got it. But wouldn't the art be like you have to wait for it to dry before you do it again? I mean,
yes. Your paper is more moist, is more absorbent than the canvas. So that's a little bit of help. But yes, you do have to dry between each color. And so if you go to a studio where they're doing woodcuts, you find that there's clotheslines strung everywhere because if they're doing multiple prints, like say 20 prints, each one has to be done. Each color has to be done at the same time, and then so that no print is going to be exactly like the print before it. However, it'll be pretty much like it because you never know exactly how that transfer of ink is going to happen. Some of it is totally out of your control.
It seems for an art form to be too regimental in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, because, I think about painting in watercolor or in oils, and you can do whatever you want pretty much. If you make a mistake, then, but if you carving a whole piece of wood and then, whoopsie, okay, your sailboat has one extra sail or something.
I think it's one of the characteristics of an artist who does that kind of work, as opposed to some painters who are freer, is that craftsmanship really plays a big part in doing woodcuts, especially color woodcuts.
Yeah. I can't imagine. It seems like it doesn't sound like that much fun.
I actually want to do it now, though. Because you're learning how to. I want to kind of do it.
It's more fun. Yeah, it's more fun than you might think because it's not like a reproduction. I mean, it is very similar, and you're trying to do multiple prints, but each one is slightly different because that ink just transfers differently. And so the colors in one are going to be similar to the last one you did, but there's going to be some anomaly. It's not going to be perfectly like the previous one or the one that's after it.
See, that's kind of like pottery.
There's always an element of surprise for the artist.
Yeah, pottery has that pottery, glassware. When that element of surprise with that, to me, is really cool. And music has it when you have different musicians come in and play a song with your, record. But this is neat to me because it's almost like, I've watched people do burn etching into wood, But to me now, this is my question. If you're working in reverse, does that mean your left side of the brain now has to get artistic compared to your right side?
Uh-oh.
Well,
I'm serious. You have to change gears. You're going to have to go to the other side and go, okay.
You have to think in stages.
I know, which is hard. It's like you just want to do it. But I find that the element of surprise is cool because it's kind of like letting, nature take over a little bit,
Yeah.
But
I mean, when you were a kid, or maybe more recently than when you were a kid, you've tried in school, you would put some paper on some paint on a piece of paper, and then you would fold it, and then you would open it up again. And now you'd have a butterfly or something like that. The one side would be similar to the other, but not exactly like it. And it's kind of like that. I mean, there's a playfulness to it.
Yeah.
It's not as regimented as it sounds.
No, and it's like making, I used to like doing, making snowflakes with cutting pieces,
Same thing.
You never know what's going to happen until you open it up,
Right.
And then the therapist will take over and say, if you're doing those kind of paintings, they're going to go, now you got to read this.
I think I identified with Margaret Jordan-Patterson because when I was little, I had a praying watercolor set.
Oh, yeah, cool.
And, they were real common. You could usually buy them in dime stores when they had dime stores. And that was how Louis Prang started making these watercolor sets because he was a big believer in art education for kids. And so anyway, he started producing instruction manuals for children. When she was living on her boat, she got some of those, and she got her set of watercolors, and so that was really the first I'll call it instruction that she got in art, because before that she was just observing and recording things that she saw.
Wow, that's amazing, though.
I know that name Prang, and it took me a while to figure it out. So I'm like, I know that. But I remember my grandmother one of her jobs was to take black and white photos, because that's all they had when she was doing this, and paint on the photos and make them color. And I think she used a Prang watercolor set. I remember her talking about it, like that's, and I'm more oil paint, not watercolor, because I like control. But she used to Prang, I'm pretty sure it was Prang watercolors that she used to paint on top of the photos. And then the person would
My grandmother did the same thing.
No way, that's so cool.
I think I think that was a task that people could do at home, and I think a lot of ladies got involved in that because they could earn money, and it was a ladylike occupation, and they could still be at home.
Oh, that's so funny! Wow.
Oh,
I love that.
Oh, it is an occupation, and because you weren't. Let's get into that whole thing where we're not supposed to have careers, Back in the day,
it was very ladylike.
Yes, or you're allowed to embroider. It's a hobby. Yes. You're allowed to have hobbies, and if they make some money, that's nice.
Look at that.
But so that wasn't. So the Prang watercolors. So those kind of watercolor sets weren't really necessarily just for kids. That was for everybody. That was. The watercolor.
And then you mentioned oil. There were, I think that tinting a photograph sometimes involved an oil emulsion of some kind. But I'm not certain. I'm not certain of that. But because it might have, the oil paint might have ruined the film itself. So I'm not sure.
That's possible for sure, because you use turpentine, which is acid, to make the watercolor thinner, or the oil paint thinner. That's possible.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So what are you painting right now?
Yeah.
Well,
I'm
sitting in my studio, and it's a wreck. I'm working on one painting that I've been working on a while, but I've got so many interests and so many irons in the fire right now that my painting has suffered. my time spent painting my stuff has suffered, but that's okay because I'll get back to it. But this museum business, my studio is right now a storage area for other people's paintings.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
And so anyway, I'll be very glad when we get a building for the museum, because not only because it will benefit so many people, but it's going to benefit me in getting back to painting in my own space.
Yeah, you need light. You know.
Yeah.
And before you go, I did actually want to touch on the light thing, because when we did that interview on lighting, and everyone you can read Victoria's article on the blend, and will be in our Celebrate the Arts magazine too. The light thing. Here we were in we've done California, the Southwest, and then Florida, the swampy look and everything. But it was when we were up in the Midwest and Madison, Wisconsin, and everything coming down through. Oh my gosh, the snow and how that light changed. It was like a whole different light.
Amazing.
I just have never experienced.
It's that one light is better necessarily than another.
No.
It's all interesting.
It is fascinating.
But each region has its own characteristic light.
Yeah, and here in the Pacific Northwest, it is really fascinating to me about the light, because you can see people who kind of just blend in with it, don't do color, just kind of like, you could walk by their house and not realize it's there, and then you see people going, oh, no, we're planting the tulips, we're, putting some cheer. There's some of the coastal communities, they're adding more color, bright houses. Like, we're bright orange, we're bright blue, and you can see that they're like, no, we're gonna put some cheer in there. But the lighting is no matter, so everything really pops. Like the flowers are double color here than if they're in the Southwest. A yellow tulip won't stand out as much in the desert as it does here. And it's like a whole, it does kind of make me feel like when we were up in the Midwest, but then you have this coastal color, and the light, like the sun only comes out at the end of the day, because we're in the ocean front and all the harbors and bays, and suddenly you'll get this little color of turquoise, and you better get it while you can, man, because it's fleeting. So but it's different. It's different.
It makes you appreciate it when you see it.
Yeah.
Things are ever changing, and when they, it's always a wonderful experience to have a visual, surprise, I guess. That it's a rich experience.
I think that's why they have so much public art here. And you remember we did the interview on the totems and the article you did on totems. So we've seen some here. We were in Lewis and Clark country, which gets me completely giddy. But one thing we did recently, and it's going to be one of your public art, Victoria sent us on, like, go find public art across America. Like, I could write a book on it now.
Amazing stuff.
Out here is really fascinating, but Willapa National Wildlife Refuge is kind of spread out all over the Long Beach Peninsula in Washington, and there's these artists got together and created an art trail, and it's not even, if it takes you 10 minutes, because you're looking, it's short, but well done. Mm-hmm. It's this winding boardwalk over marshland, and it's also in like a certain time of year, which we're too early for, you can see the salmon spawn. But they have created, there's a picnic table as you go in, and someone has created a huge dragonfly on the top of the picnic table. We're talking cement, right?
So cool.
And the chairs are wings. And you start walking, and then they've created a whale skeleton. Mm-hmm. And then you go down this winding pathway, boardwalk, like really winding, which is cool. And they have I wouldn't say totems, but wood carvings of all the wildlife, bears and everything. And you get down, and all of a sudden you're greeted by giant feathers. I think there's like five or six feathers. And each feather represents an extinct species that we've lost in this country of a bird. And so this is so cool. And then all of a sudden there's like little markers of someone's done wire art and painted it with, or metal art, I should say, with different species of birds so you can identify, and you go around the corner and there's salmon metal art everywhere to represent the salmon. Seriously, it was a trip. It was just a whole other nature. It's crazy. It's crazy cool.
So cool.
Yeah.
Hey,
So
it sounds like you had a wonderful time. I'm
this public art thing is crazy. Yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome. So I'll send you photos of that because, really, we could write a book by now. It is, and we're getting there. We're getting there. But thank you so much. It is always a pleasure. Everyone, Victoria's on our show every third Saturday, and you can keep up with her at victoriachick.com and our shows at bigblendradio.com. Her article is also up again about Margaret Jordan-Patterson up on Blend Radio and TV.com. Just type in Victoria or Margaret Jordan, you'll find it. And thank you so much, and we'll talk to you next month.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk about another woman artist we haven't heard of.
I love it. We love it, love it, love it.
Okay. We'll see. We'll talk to you next month.
Okay.
All right. You take care.
Okay.
All right.
You too.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.